Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about being an and person and not an or person, specifically in regards to one issue, and maybe I'll talk about others, who knows, but the issue of time spent with the partner versus with the kids. And before I get to that, please do subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was when the elephant in the room is you and your partner would never be best friends or potentially friends at all. And we're closing in on 200 extra episodes that are only open to you if you're a subscriber. The way it works is you click on the subscription link in the episode description, and after that, you can listen to those extra episodes on all platforms because it sends you an email. You click through to whatever platform you want. It's $8.99 a month. And once you do that, then you get to listen everywhere. That's a real common question people email me about, is whether they can listen on other platforms to the subscriber episodes, and you can. Okay, so sometimes guys put their wives into a zero-sum situation where it's like either she's supposed to hang out with the kids and give the kids her attention, or she's supposed to do that with you. And I call this zero-sum because there's always a loser, right? So in like game theory, zero-sum means that if one person wins, the other person loses. So in this situation, there's guys, for example, who say, like, we have a baby and a toddler, but I want a weekend away. Now, in a weekend away, if her goal is to spend time, is to be a good mother, and she has very little kids, you know, it's zero-sum. Either that's a weekend she spends with you or them. Now, not zero-sum would be, of course, spending a weekend with you and them, right? So when guys pause, and preoccupied attachment guys do this, and listen to all my other stuff on preoccupied attachment. This is not something that, you know, every guy even asks for from a wife with small children, right? If she doesn't want to. Of course, there's plenty of women that would want to, especially, you know, women that feel really overwhelmed. They're at home all the time. But honestly, when you have a baby, most people don't want to travel away from the baby extensively. That's totally normal and evolutionary. If your wife does, cool. And if she doesn't, I'm here to tell you that's normal. But we're still going to use it as our operating example right now. So if she sees this as zero-sum, where you're asking her to not see the kids for a weekend so that she can only see you, then that's an or question, right? What would be an and way to frame it so that she could see you and the kids? Well, pretty simple. She sees you during a different time of the day than the children are available. So plenty of people with babies and toddlers go out for date night because the kids go to sleep so early. And if the kids don't go to sleep until, let's say, 9 or something, and you want to eat dinner by 7, well, babysitters are great and the kids love them. And I mean, that's a little bit of time that she's not spending with them that she is spending with you, but she spent the whole day with them. So that is a day that she spent with you and the kids. However, if it's a weekend away, it's you or the kids. How else do I see this work? Again, with anxiously attached guys, is they come home from work and they want to talk to their wife, but the kids are talking to their wife. And so they make this whole thing that's fake, that they don't even know is fake, it's subconscious, about how the kids need to learn respect and they can't interrupt adult conversations. And so she either has to listen to him or to them. And guess what? He's going to lose, because then she's going to be like, well, if the kids can't interrupt, the kids are around, they're asking me for stuff, so why don't you and I just talk later? And she's not going to talk to him later because she's honestly fucking annoyed, She's like, what do you gotta, be competing with the children for my attention? They're little kids. That's a very common thing to think. Now, I believe that the children should learn not to interrupt also. So that's an and. But in this specific case where I've seen this used kind of as a weapon, it's not because the children need to learn manners. He doesn't ask shit about the children learning manners the rest of the time. The only time they need to learn manners is when he wants to talk, unfettered and have her staring at him the way that she used to before they had children. And so it's not honest. It's not intellectually honest that he's mobilizing this idea of the interruption. So, you could see the difference. Everything has some nuance, right? So you could both want the children to learn not to interrupt, but also your real agenda there is this zero-sum, all attention on me agenda. So how do women feel when they're put into these situations? Well, they're always going to pick the kids. And if they don't pick the kids, they are going to hate you. So another one, a not so neutral or even positive one is fighting. So there are many, many high conflict couples, unfortunately, that are, fighting in front of the kids. And I talk about this all the time about how bad this is and how toxic it is for the children. It stresses the children out. The amount, I have so much stuff on this, so I don't need to go into it. Just go to the Spotify search app and in the search bar of the Dr. Psych Mom Show, put in conflict, marital conflict, fighting, put in those terms. Point being, don't fight in front of your kids, right? And if you think that that's the only way they learn how to resolve arguments, you forgot. It's the only way they learn how to fight. I have a whole podcast on that, and that's what they learn to do because most of the time you make up in private and you fight in front of them. Exactly the opposite of what you should be doing. So point being that there's many couples where the guy is, and there's plenty of couples where the woman's doing this too, but we're talking about the preoccupied attachment man here, and I can switch it, but at the end if you want. But point is, a lot of guys are yelling and having these yelling fights, and she's yelling too, but he's taking her into the room away from the children, and she's saying, no, I need to make lunch for the kids, and he says, well, then you shouldn't have done XYZ before, and now you got to hear what I think about it. And in those situations, again, zero sum, super toxic. The kids learn that dad cannot control himself. He cannot wait to talk until later. If he needs to be heard or he needs to yell at mom, which is how that's perceived, he needs to do it right now. And it doesn't even matter anything. It doesn't matter if they were all going to go to the park or if they're going to eat lunch. This is super common among children that grew up in dysfunctional homes with a lot of open conflict, is that anything that the kids thought was going to happen that day is based on whether or not the parents are fighting. And there's usually one parent thought to be the aggressor. And in this case, we're talking about an anxiously attached man that wants to get his point across, get her to zero sum, listen to him only. And that's at the expense of the children who are therefore alone and listening to fighting and not going to the park and not getting lunch and what have you. So that's a pretty obvious and sad zero sum situation. Now, women, they don't tend to do it with the kids, from what I see, the same way. They do it with other things like work. Sometimes they get very anxiously attached women will get very upset that he's at work or that he does hobbies or that, he's with his friends or what have you. So this is usually, again, a preoccupied attachment person that is the pursuer of the more avoidant attachment person. In the first case, the woman was the more avoidant attachment person. And in this case, the man is the more avoidant attachment person. And the woman is constantly pursuing him and basically saying things like, well, like he has a day of work with meetings and she's like, well, you can't work at this time because it's the kid's pediatrician appointment. Then you can't work at that time because, that's when I go for my walk and I need to, be able to decompress. And I also want you to come with me because that's our couple time. And then you can't work in the afternoon because that's when you have to pick up one of the kids because I can't possibly pick up both of the kids. This is kind of the situation that I see when I said like if your husband, there's a podcast I have, if your husband takes over all the emotional and physical labor, why? And there are super anxious and depressed women with anxious attachment or fearful avoidant attachment, that basically the elephant in the room and the big secret in their marriage is the husband does everything and he's supposed to work too. And a lot of what he does is like mood management and mood placation of her. And he's always trying to schedule his meetings and shit around that. But he's extremely anxious about his job because he can never say that he's going to be present at anything. This frequently happens more with guys who telecommute, obviously. And, you know, it really is an existential threat because he can never plan out his day, because if she needs anything, then he has to solely focus on her. You know, and sometimes this does happen with women with borderline traits, and in the inverse, it happens with men with borderline traits. You know, in the first guy that I was talking about, the hypothetical, but I've seen, you know, examples of myriad times of the guy who brings the wife in to listen to him rant about what she did was wrong, and the children are meanwhile outside, you know, by themselves for hours while the parents fight. That guy has borderline traits. And as I've discussed, many borderlines are partnered with narcissists. So, I mean, it's a race to the bottom. But the point is this is not good. And if you put your partner into a zero-sum situation, it doesn't have to be as elaborate as the whole fighting or the guy's not allowed to work or anything. It could just be like, are you basically telling your spouse that the only sort of time with you that is meaningful is when they win over everything and you only have their sole attention and the only thing they're allowed to do is focus on you? Because if you do put them into that kind of situation, they are going to resent you because they feel like a prisoner. And prisoners don't tend to like the prison guard. So time with you turns into something that they have to do. Otherwise, you get so upset that you're intolerable to deal with and the whole family suffers. And if that's how it is, it's not going to work out well. And a woman's always going to pick the kids. And eventually the man's going to pick the job because he has to make a living. He can't lose his job. So those are the big ones that I see. Now, it's not good, of course, to take your partner away from hobbies or fitness or anything, but those things is more of a gray area, right? So if a guy's always going out on Saturdays to play 8 hours of golf and she says, I would rather that you don't do that, you know, especially most of the time, maybe only some of the time. Totally. Like, yes, correct, you know, but I mean, and if she's saying like, can you please skip a work meeting to take the kid to the pediatrician one time? Yeah, sure. That's a good ask. I like it, especially if she can't reschedule it for some unknown reason. Right. But point being, there has to be a give and take. But what there's not a give and take with is a person who only counts time spent together if someone else loses. Now, what would make somebody act like this? Frequently is two types of situations. One is there were a lot of kids and difficult kids and siblings in the home, and you could never get the parents' attention. So you have this fantasy of getting the parents' full attention and beating out the other siblings for your parents' full attention. Or you grew up in a house with a lot of fighting, and the other quote-unquote sibling was your other parent. So like a boy who never got to win because his father was always ranting at his mother and taking all of her attention and taking her into the room, whether it was for fighting or fucking or whatever, crazy, chaotic situation, then he never got his mother's attention, so he never won. And a child is supposed to win attention. You know, that's normal because it's, you know, that's how our species survives as we prioritize the next generation. And so not every single time, as I'm discussing, but, you know, a lot of the time the child's supposed to feel attentive, like there's an attentive parent there. And so if he never felt like that, then he may become obsessed in adulthood with winning over his own children. Often when this type of pattern is pointed out in therapy, he's embarrassed and he wants to work on it because he sees that he's redoing the very same thing that fucked him up so much, right? And the same thing, so it's either like that you never got attention because you were literally competing with somebody else, and now you're bringing that forward into your current relationship, or it could be this kind of situation where it's this just, and this comes from the same thing, that you felt like you didn't get enough attention at home. But like, even if it wasn't like a core facet of your internal experience that you were always competing for attention, if you have low self-esteem and you are somebody who struggles with thinking that your partner doesn't think that you're good enough or attractive enough or fun enough to spend time with, then you are basically fighting everybody. So it's not just your own kids. It's just like everything, their hobbies, their friends, their everything. And you're always feeling so insecure in general, which again is really related a lot to the attention you received in the home. But it doesn't have to be like the central story of your life was you were always fighting your siblings for your mother's attention, or your dad or your mom for your dad's attention, or whatever. It could just be that you are so insecure in general, and your partner, so you're preoccupied, and then your partner is very avoidant, and you feel like there just isn't enough time. So you hate yourself doing it, but you find yourself like competing for attention, because you feel that the attention is so finite. Sometimes, and not sometimes, all the time, this is amplified by literally like a lack of help and support. So people with family help don't tend to feel like this, because if the kids go to grandma, it's not seen as zero sum. Whereas for many women, unfortunately, they see like a babysitter as zero sum. Now, kids love babysitters. My kids used to love babysitters. They do babysitting. I mean, kids love like teenagers, young kids love teenagers. I think those are really positive relationships. But some people, especially if the woman's really anxious or she had some sort of trauma or abuse history, then if she doesn't like recognize that as anxiety, then unfortunately she'll isolate the child from those experiences of potentially having a babysitter. Then it does seem zero sum. So my point is, overall, when a couple, and this isn't just for this, it's for everything, when a couple is situated in a supportive extended family unit, like we are supposed to be in extended kin networks evolutionarily, then some of this stuff goes away because there's not as finite resources to fight over in terms of time and attention. So for example, if a guy goes golfing, but a woman's sister lives next door and they just hang out all day, the two of them with the kids, well, that's a lot more palatable than if you live in a different city from everybody and your husband goes golfing and you're basically just alone for yet another day only with your children, dealing with them yourself. That's not fun, So people can vary, of course, on how much time they want to spend with each other. And no healthy woman will be cool with the guy golfing every single weekend and never seeing her. But there's a huge range in terms of how supported you feel, in terms of how much time and attention you need from your spouse. Because I talk about this book all the time, The All or Nothing Marriage by Eli Finkel, we cannot be everything to our spouse. So there's also a real world social context that amplifies a lot of this, individual psychological attachment style level stuff. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this and found it interesting. Be a good one to talk to your therapist about if you're in therapy. And of course, if you ever need therapy or coaching, reach out to us, bestlifebehavioralhealth.com, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.